Hey, how's it guys? So in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to build a GPT chatbot using OpenAI's Assistants API in Python. So given the generative AI is going to take over the world anytime soon, learning how to build an AI chatbot becomes a very useful skill to learn. And in my opinion, by building a chatbot, this is the best way to relearn how to maneuver OpenAI's Assistants API framework. So this is going to be a semi-beginner friendly tutorial. I'll be writing a few classes here and there, but nothing complicated. And it is ideal if you have some experience working with Python and OpenAI API. Now I'll break down the lesson into 3 steps. The first step is we're going to create a Python virtual environment, and this step is optional. The second step is we're going to install the Python dependencies, basically all the necessary Python libraries. And the last step is we'll dive into the script development. Now, with that being said, let's get started. All right, so just in case, if you are interested in learning more about the assistance framework, you can go to OpenAI's documentation, which I'll link the link in the description below. And to be honest, I went through the documentation many times, minimum 5 to 6 times. And this is not the best documentation to begin with, just because when you are creating a GPT assistant using the OpenAI Assistance framework, there are so many moving pieces. And I have a tutorial on covering how to get started with the Assistance API, which I'll also link the link in the description below. And as I mentioned before, so this is the documentation that I'll highly recommend you go through to get some ideas on how the assistance framework works. It may be a little bit confusing for beginners, or if you are not very familiar with the OpenAI API framework. Just go to the content quickly, then follow along the tutorial, and throughout some of the script development, I'll explain how each component works. At that time, I think it might make more sense to you. All right, so let's do this. Let me show you a demo of the chatbot that we'll be building in this exercise. Now let me launch the chatbot. Oh, I have a typo. All right, so once start the chatbot, once start the chat session, here I can start by giving a query, which is my prompt. And for this chatbot, I designed the chatbot to answer questions regarding how to get started with AWS in terms of getting the certification. For example, let's say I have a question. Let me paste the question. I'm a developer with a few years of experience in Python and AWS. What are some of the certification that may help me with my career? So I can press enter to send my question. Now, depending on the query, it may take like a couple seconds to maybe half minute for the chatbot to respond. Now here, if we look at the output, now because in the script, I have a while loop that checks the status of the query. So I'm printing this message, waiting for the run to complete just for testing. And once we get the response back, so from AWS instructor chatbot. So based on your experience in Python and AWS, so here are the answers based on my query. Now, despite that, for this exercise, we're going to create a chatbot for a specific use case. You can definitely change the chatbot's definition or purpose based on your use case. So it can be you can create a chatbot for cooking or providing cooking recipes. You can create a chatbot to help me to organize your travel itinerary and stuff. Now, just in case, if I have a follow-up question, I can continue the conversation until I type quit, and that's going to close the conversation session. So this is a very simple chatbot exercise. For now, we'll use terminal as the GUI, but later on, I'll be creating a separate video on how to use PyQt framework to create a professional-looking desktop GUI to implement in the chatbot. Now, let me close the window here. Oops. Right, so launch your terminal. We're going to create a Python virtual environment that is dedicated to this project. Now here I'm going to type Python-m followed by the module name, env, followed by the project name. Now for this project, I'm going to name the project my GBT chatbot and enter. And once the environment is created, it's basically a folder, so we can see it into the folder. Then we're going to activate the environment by type period script active. Now here I'm also going to go into the folder right here. Now, if you don't have a OpenAI account, you can go to openai.com, sign for account, and as a new user, I think you get $5 of credit that you need to use within 90 days. Now, logging into your OpenAI account, and here we're going to create a new API key. I'm going to name the key, let's do tutorial. Now I'm going to leave this window open. I don't have a place to save the API key yet. Now here in my project folder, I'm going to create a script. And I name the script let's name this as chatbot.py. Oh, touch chatbot.py. Then we go ahead and open the file. Alright, so meanwhile, let's install the dependency first. So we can type pip install OpenAI. And I forgot to mention that because I will be providing files or documents to supply to the chatbot to allow the chatbot to retrieve additional information that is not available on the web. And those are called OpenAI files. I'm also going to install pandas library to help me to display my files in a table format. Now press enter. Now once the libraries are installed, we can dive into the script development. I'm going to copy the API key. And here I'm going to create a variable. Let's call this an API key. Now I can close this window. While we are still on the console here, I want to go to files. Now, these are the files that I currently store in OpenAI's storage repository that I can fit into my chatbot to allow the chatbot to retrieve information, as I mentioned before, is not available on the website or on the internet. And here, let me delete the files, these two files. So to enable the chatbot, giving the knowledge to answer my question regarding AWS certification, I'm going to supply this document here. So this is a document that contains information regarding what are the best career path when it comes to working with AWS framework or cloud service. And here, I want to show you one thing. Let's go back to the documentation. Right, so if I go to actually not beta. So if we go to documentation under assistance, then go to supported files. And to feed the files or documents, we'll be using this retrieval function or feature. Now currently the document types are supported is very limited. And to be honest, I was kind of surprised to see CSV file is not supported. But I foresee that OpenAI is going to add additional supported file types. But for now, these are the supported document type. And here, Microsoft Word document is supported, and which is a big surprise. So in this case, I'm going to upload my supporting files first. So I'm going to create a folder, and I'll name the folder Documents. And I'll copy my Word document file. Now here, I created a utility module. Now if we look at this OpenAI utility module, so here I'm importing the OS module and the Pandas module. Then I create two classes to manage my files and the assistants. So two classes, very simple classes. For the files manager class, so we need to provide the client argument, and it's going to be the OpenAI client instance. Inside this class, we have three methods: list files def. So this method is going to export the files information or the files list as a data frame object. Then we have this method called upload files to upload a document to the OpenAI's file server. And to manage my assistants, keep in mind that an assistant is just a template, and you can create as many assistants as you want, and each assistant template can serve different purpose. So at the end, you can have maybe 20 different assistant templates. One assistant can be used for coding, one assistant can be used for traveling organizer, one assistant can be used for organized cooking recipes, and so on. Now for the preparation, in this utility module, I'm going to upload my Word document files. So let me go ahead and create my classes in memory. So I'm going to run this code block here. Then I can go to the main routine here, and I'll import the OpenAI class. Now, there are two ways you can save your API key for the OpenAI module to recognize. One is to directly provide the API key, and the other way is to save the API key as an environment variable. But in this case, because I already have an API key created, let me go ahead and use this one. All right, so I'll go ahead and run this code block to create my OpenAI client object and the file manager object and the assistant manager object. Then I'm going to upload my Word document file by using the file manager.upload file method. Now, if we go back to the console, go to Files, and here's the file, the Word document file I just uploaded. Now, if I print my files list, so currently, these are all the files I currently have in my files repository. Now, in terms of the assistants, here let me delete this assistants template. All right, so right now it's completely empty. Now we're going to create the assistant template. So if we look at this code right here, so from client.beta, right now the assistant API is still in the beta stage. And to be honest, there are still a couple issues that OpenAI is still working on troubleshooting. But overall, all the core functionalities are still there. So from client.beta.assistants.create, first, we're going to give our assistant a name. And I'll name the assistant JJ instruction. Actually, let's call this instructor. Now, instructions is going to define the purpose of the assistant. The instructions parameter is actually quite important because it guides the AI in terms of how to respond the query and how to narrow down the query search result. You can also define the tone in terms of how the chatbot is going to respond to users. Description is optional. This basically just helps describing the purpose of the chatbot and does not do anything in terms of how to modify the behavior of the assistant. Two is going to be what features. So currently OpenAI has 3 billion features. One is knowledge retrieval, which is allowing the Assistants API to read the documents or files from the files repository. And the other two let's take a look. So the other two are code interpreter, and which allows the chatbot to execute a function. It can be a Python function, Java function, JavaScript function on the OpenAI's development server. And the third one is the function calling feature. So I haven't really get a chance to use the function calling feature just because it does not serve any purpose in terms of to make the assistants to be more capable, I guess. So I'm trying to say here is that this feature is not very useful. For assistants template, we're going to be using the retrieval feature. Then we need to define the GPT model that the assistants will be using. Now for the model, here, let's look at the documentation string. So for the model, I'll be using the GPT 3.5 turbo model. So the 3.5 model is very limited when it comes to capability. But the benefit using the GPT 3.5 model is that it's really cheap. And I don't see the model parameter. Okay, so it's not very descriptive. So if you want to use the GPT-4 model, then you will need to assign the GPT-4 Turbo Preview model. But at the same time, I believe the GPT-4 model is, I think, 10 times more expensive than the GPT 3.5 model. Unless you're not doing anything too complicated, they'll suggest you stick with the GPT 3.5 Turbo November 06 model. File IDs basically means that for the assistant template, for my files repository, which file do you have permission to view? So today you can have up to 100 files, and each file size can be up to 100 gigabytes. Now let me go ahead and create the assistance template. Oh, because this is the file ID from the old file, the file that I just deleted before. Right, let me refresh the page, and I'll grab the file ID. And we try again. So I'm going to print the assistant object, and I'll grab the assistant ID. And it's something that you cannot retrieve from the console itself. Actually, you can. So this is the assistant that I just created. Now, if you need to modify an assistant template, you can go directly to the console and modify the instructions or choose the model. And I noticed that they have a lot more models available right now. And last time when I checked, there were only 2 models available. And you can also have the option to turn on the tools feature, which is referred to this parameter here. And you can also manually add the files as well. Right, so if we run a test directly from the console, and I haven't used this before, this is my first time. So let me paste my question. Okay, so let's take a look at the screen here. So we're creating a thread. A thread is a container that hosts the conversation. Then we have this run instructions. So this is going to be the prompt that we're sending to the assistant thread, followed by the output generated from the assistant's chatbot. And for this query, we use 3,818 tokens. Right, so we have created the assistant template. I'm going to grab the assistant's ID. And I'll create a variable called assistant ID. Now, from the import statement, I'm going to import the type module. And from OpenAI, I'm going to import the OpenAI class. Now, this line here is not needed, so let me delete this one. All right, so here I'm going to insert my entry point. Inside my entry point, I'm going to define the API key as well as the assistant that I want to use by the assistant ID, as well as the assistant that I want to use, which is going to be defined by the assistant ID. Then I'm going to create my client object. Then I'm going to create an empty thread by using client.beta.threads.create. To send the query to the assistant, I created a function called ask question and get response. So this function takes 4 parameters: their ID, assistant ID, question, so this is going to be the query from the user, and additional instructions. So let's look at the first block. So when we send a query, we need to create a message thread first by using client.beta.threads.messages.create. Then we're going to assign the thread, which is going to be the message container, followed by the rule, followed by the query. When we create a message thread, the message is going to save in the threads object itself. But to be able to push the query to the assistant thread, we need to execute a run. I don't know why they do that, but I think this is a little bit redundant. But anyway, so we can execute a run by using client.beta.threads.runs.create. Then we need to assign the thread, which is the conversation container, and the assistant ID. Now, just in case, if you need to provide additional instructions on top of the global instructions that we define in the assistant level. So for example, based on different users, you may have different instructions. In that case, you can define those instructions using the additional instructions parameter. And once we create a run, so this basically pushing the query to the assistant thread object. Then we need to wait till the message gets processed and complete. And you can see this as you're sending API code to a server or endpoint, and the server is processing the input and trying to generate the output. So you have this while loop to check if the status of the queue is complete. Now let me take out the print statement. And just in case, occasionally the query may fail. You exceed the token limits, or if the query is not formatted correctly. And if that happens, then the queue status is going to be fail. Then I want to print the message run fail, followed by the reason why the run failed. Then X out the function. And once the run is complete, so here I forgot to mention, so you can use client.beta.threads.runs.retrieve, and we need to provide the thread ID as well as the run ID. Status. And once the run is complete, that means that the response is generated, and we can use client.beta.threads, and we'll reference the messages, and we'll list all the messages by providing the conversation container ID, which is also the thread ID, and return the text string from the last message. In this case, will be the first message from the messages.data list. All right, so this is going to be the last step. So here we're going to insert a while loop to keep the conversation going until you type quit, and that's going to terminate the conversation session. So let's look at the code block here. We'll insert the while loop, and our condition is always going to be true. So because we want to continue the conversation until we type quit to terminate the session. So from the input function, we have the query. And for this session, I'm going to address the user as JJ, which is myself. So here for the additional instructions, I'm going to state, please make sure to address the person as JJ and also include the reason why you select the certification path if required. Then we're going to call the function and wait till the response is generated. Then we're going to print the output. Then continue from line 36 and just keep going until you terminate the session. Now save the file and let's do a test run. All right, so I'm going to type pi dot. Actually, this should be chatbot, not chatboy. All right, so I'm going to type pi chatbot dot pi. And again, I'm going to paste the same query, enter, and I get the response back. So based on my qualification, I may be suitable for solutions architect, developer, DevOps, and these three certifications. Now, if I have a follow-up question, I can continue type my question to send to the duet session. But for now, this is everything I need. Then I'm going to type quit to stop the conversation session. So this is going to be everything I'm going to cover in this lesson, and hopefully you guys find this video useful. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.